نحمده ونصلي على رسول الكريم أما بعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to today's session of the Wayfarer's Path, in which we're following a special series, the Friends of Allah series. How things change so swiftly. Truly, Allah can do anything. Just a couple of weeks back, or 3 weeks back, I think we conceived this idea. It was going on for a while. This idea of having this podcast, right, in which we actively sit down, have discussions, learn from active Muslims in professional fields, and it just started. I remember ad hoc, reactive, things crystallized. We had our first session, the first bayan, and alhamdulillah, a resoundingly positive reaction to it. Right? Not to brag, but that was a grand total of 350 plus views on my YouTube channel. Right. So thank you for boost and six new subscribers. Yeah, and 4 likes. And 14. Oh wow! Sorry, you missed out the ones. Four comments. Yeah, 4 comments. On an equally serious note, now we're sitting over here. I'm in Karachi. Just came back recently. I'm sure you've seen through the activities that have been going on, a lot of messages going out. There was a lot of positive groundswell reaction about people wanting to know more. So the point I'm trying to put across is that Allah leaves no effort unrewarded. We're all as professionals in our personal and professional life striving to go ahead. So inshallah, just keep at it. So I'm Sacha for the uninitiated. My background is I graduated from our Sheikh's alma mater, Karachi Grammar School, and I went to the Netherlands, spent 12 years over there, did my bachelor's in economics, master's in sustainable development, and I spent over almost 12 years over there within the field of ESG and sustainability. I moved back to Pakistan in 2017, not in the best of circumstances. And I mention this because that's when I came across Sheikh Saab, our Sheikh Humayun Hanif, Damal Khatum Ali. And during the course of this conversation, I hope we can unwrap a lot of his life and how, and that's the primary purpose of this series, right? Yeah. To unwrap how our success was predicated on our beloved Sheikh Humayuni Damal Khatum Ali, right? So I met Sheikh Saab in 2017. I joined Engro thereafter. I worked in sustainability, CSR, sales, different functions. And I was there also with Sheikh Saab in 2017. Sheikh Saab granted Khilafat to me in 2025. And he had been pushing me a lot, encouraging me a lot to start this podcast, to start this channel. And alhamdulillah, it ticks all the marks of my own personal interests. And of course, again, testament to our sheikhs um, knowledge of each and every salik of his, what they're good at and what they should focus on, right? So that's my background. So the channel is called The Wayfarer's Path. And we talk about how to live life as an active Muslim in an increasingly discordant world, right? Every day, I'm sure you open the news, um, there is no shortage of catastrophic events that are happening. And I see this around me a lot. I see how people uh, are extremely anxious, are extremely panicking, and it affects me too sometimes. But Alhamdulillah, again, because of our Shaykh, I feel that not only is the impact not so strong on us, on me, but in fact, I'm able to thrive, right? And the purpose of this series is to show how one can thrive in this world um, while being an active Muslim, not just while being, but through being the active Muslim, right? So that's so. I'll just be short intro because I want to like really expand upon that's the whole purpose of this podcast also about this amazing journey that you have been through. So Ahmed Bhai, I like to see a lot is a budding, if not a textile tycoon, mashallah. I saw the number also, you revealed your revenue number, so awesome. 10 points over there. But a very beloved of our Sheikh also. You've been associated a very long time with our Sheikh, right? And we're really looking forward to learning from your journey. In the previous podcast, in the previous series, which again, I highly encourage you to check it out. we spoke about Shaykh Ahmed's university years, right? And I think there was a lot of tidbits. I got a lot of feedback also from people who were like they were really inspired and they really learned a lot from that podcast, and will hopefully be able to implement it on their in their lives also, right? So the structure of today's podcast is that we will um, have a conversation over 1 hour.
Yeah.
And inshallah, if all things work out, then after that, we'll have a question and answer session from the audience who's joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. And from any of you who are joining online, please feel free. In fact, I would encourage you to send your questions now already. We have a roster of volunteers who will curate those questions and put it across to us.
Yeah.
So thank you also to all the volunteers who have taken the time out for this very special session. So I've spoken enough, I think, Ahmed bhai. Now over to you. So the plan of this second episode
Yeah.
of the Friends of Allah series, in which we sit with you, was to talk about your professional years, right? Now, inshallah, we will come to that, right? But I just want to take a quick step back, right? Because there's a couple of things that really, I think, are intriguing. Right?
Okay.
So Sheikh Ahmed, all our mashayikh, all our buzurgs, they start their life as innocent children, right? They're born into a certain environment, certain atmosphere,
Yeah.
a certain community. I would like to touch upon that first,
Okay.
and then maybe move to your school years,
Okay.
in which again there's overlap.
Yeah.
Before we move on to your professional years. So if you could just give us a short background, who is Ahmed bhai? When were you born? Where? And just a bit about your youthful life, if you could. On that.
So I was born in 1997 in Karachi, and I had a very normal childhood, I would say. I was
Normal
as in it was I mean, I wouldn't say middle class, but alhamdulillah, upper class childhood, where I lived in Clifton and Defense my entire life. Uh, I went to and then I grew up in a joint family setup. I did my high school from Karachi Grammar School. So I'm just going to skip from there to high school because I don't have a lot of memory of the time in between because it was all fun and games. But alhamdulillah, like in my younger years, I spent time with how all kids do, like playing around, and there was no. Uh, Actually, there's one thing that's probably might be relevant, which is ke, mm, in my childhood there was never this push towards being religious. But there was always a respect for religion, and I think the credit for that goes a lot to my grandfather. Because I remember very clearly, I remember this really vividly as well. Iske jo, we used to live with my grandfather and like in a joint family, and then he would entice us, bribe us to come with him for Asar namaz. And the way he would bribe us is he would say, jo masjid thi na, where we would go to pray, there was a park next to the masjid, and the park had chickens, and there's like a swing and stuff. And what he would say is, if you come with me for Asr, then after Asr, I'll take you to the park and you can play around in the park. And I remember me and my cousin used to go, and I still remember where we used to pray. क्योंकि हम बच्चे थे तो हम जमात में नहीं पढ़ते थे. We would pray at the end of the masjid just because we were kids. And that I mean, it's not it doesn't seem like a big deal, but I still predicate my respect and my positive association with religion simply because of the fact that my grandfather used to take me to the masjid, and then after the masjid I would play with my cousin. Sometimes he would buy something like ice cream, and usse एक positive मुझे religion के लिए बड़ी affinity build हुई थी. But beyond that there was not much.
Yeah, but not much, but I think if 20% of the prayer time your grandfather's taking you, then the sights, the positive smells, the sounds, associations, subhanallah, and there's so much power, obviously, in this act of worship, and subhanallah. So that aspect, that those memories had made you have a very strong association with religion, right? And this also makes me recall when our Bade Hazrat, Sheikh Shamsuddin, Sheikh Shamsuddin Damar Khatum Ali, there would be children playing in the mosque, right? And I think some people would say, that it's getting children getting worshippers are getting distracted, and and his response was, listen, let them stay over here,
Yeah.
let them play. How much are they disturbing you? And those same kids, because of this positive associations that they had
Yeah.
in that environment that they were playing, right? Now they are all hufas, they are all regular
Yeah.
mosque goers, they are people who are doing amazing work of Deen. So there is no effort that is minute,
Yeah.
that won't have a profound effect on the child. So mashallah.
And it has a very lasting impact. Like if I'm, this was when I was 6, 7 years old. I'm 29 today, and I still remember those feelings, those emotions, that positivity. Just the fact that we'd go with him, we'd have fun in the mosque. We'd have fun in the mosque too, right? We were kids, so we'd play around. Sometimes we get scolded by someone because we were being too loud. But that point was to say, okay, that positive association. Then later on in my life, when I actually turned to Islam, not saying I was away from Islam, but when I became serious about religion, that positive association then came back, and now I credit a lot of that to it. Uske baad, once I was done with like my primary years, I went to the Karachi Grammar School, which you're an alumna of as well. And I did my O levels and A
There
levels.
was a story of admission that maybe you want to share. Like, how did you get admitted?
I probably don't want to share that. KGS में, I was there till my O levels.
Acha.
And then after my O levels, I did not get admission into my A levels.
Just on that. I do want to touch on that topic, right? Because I think a major issue that parents are struggling with these days are where to put their children, right? There's this conflict that should we put them in extremely religious schools? Should we, I don't want to say at the extreme of the spectrum, but should we not even expose them perhaps to the worldly schools, so to speak? Should they go purely madrasas? Or at the other end of the spectrum, which is that if you won't send them exclusively to these normal schools, as we call them, then they won't succeed in life, right? So I just want to touch, like, our Shaykh is very positive about his school, about Karachi Grammar School, right? Which maybe surprises people sometimes because apparently it's a den of lavishness, but actually,
which is not wrong.
Which is not wrong.
I don't think it's wrong that people have a negative association with it, and I think there is credence to that. There is value to that argument and statement, but I would say that, look, there's two things. One is, for everything that you experience in life, for every institution that you go to, every experience that you have, there will always be positives and negatives. And the way to navigate that is not that if there's anything that is a con, you throw it away. Like, you can't throw the internet away, you can't throw AI away. The right way to approach these things is to figure out what positives you can pick from that environment in that situation, and what negatives you have to sort of protect yourself from. And specifically on the KGS point, again, I think there's credence in that fact that there are bad influences and there are situations where you can go astray simply because you're in an environment where the majority of people are engaged in activities of that sort. And I'm sure this was true at your time as well. The difference is that that will exist beyond that institution as well. It is not as if those experiences will go away after they graduate. In fact, it'll get worse. So, उधर एक controlled environment के अंदर फिर भी है. They are exposed to these things within a controlled environment, which is the same for me. And again, that's not. I went massively astray when I went to KGS, and that was because of the environment. But at the same time, I've seen multiple examples of people who brings a lot to give, and we have to put value to that as well. I mean, just the elite environment that you're in terms of, for me at least, nothing seems like a distant dream because I've been around people who've achieved so much in their life, and I've been involved in those conversations where from day one you're told that nothing is out of reach. No achievement is too big. No, like we've had people when we were young, people come in and give us lectures and talks who achieved everything there is to achieve in this world, and because they were from the same institution as we are, there was always this feeling as if, okay, they're the same as us. So whatever they've achieved, we can achieve it too. एक ये बात दूसरी बात ये कि there is an environment of excellence in that institution. Um, Ignoring everything else and not saying that that doesn't exist in other institutions, but at least to answer your point and to relate it to my experience, one thing that I took away from that institution primarily is there's this you're really pushed to excel. You're really pushed to be the best that you can be, and there is you see people who are smarter than you, who are hardworking, who are more hardworking than you, who've achieved more than you, and that as an individual pushes you to sort of.
So a parent is coming to you, right? They see that you've recently graduated. They are uh, uh, conflicted about sending their child to Karachi Grammar School, for instance, right? Or let's you make it a more elite institute, all sorts of elite institutions, right? And this person is from a background such as us, so to speak.
Yeah.
Would you encourage this person to try these schools out?
I think it depends on two things. One, it depends on how much effort those parents have put in providing their children with the right values. Because if the base is unstructured, then audio is low.
Online audience are saying the audio is low, so if you guys can speak a little bit louder.
So our apologies for the audio issues. Please do let us know if the audio is not so if it's not audible, and we'll make an issue.
Okay.
We'll make an effort to improve that. Our apologies again uh, for this issue.
To get back to what I was saying, I think if someone were to ask me whether I would recommend sending their child to an elite institution, I think it depends, first of all, on how much effort they've put in providing and inculcating the right values in their children. Because if you haven't done that base work, then you're setting them up for failure.
But that would be any institution, right? If you don't set up a strong base, you send them even to a second tier school or even a religious school, I would dare say.
It could backfire, right? So, if you as a parent have provided your children with the right values, and I again for this I have to go back to my Sheikh. After KGS, I went to LUMS, and it's not like LUMS was any better in terms of the environment it was in. But through the blessings of my Sheikh, I was given the right values. I was given the right perspective on how to approach that experience. And Alhamdulillah, I mean, we spoke about this in the last podcast. It didn't have an impact. It didn't have a negative impact on me. I took positive from that institution.
And you think it's important for our future generations to inculcate these elite elite mindset, or I don't mean in an arrogant sort of way, but you can say you touched on many of the points, right?
Yeah.
Striving, ambition, pushing yourself, being exposed to the best things that are there.
Yeah.
As an active Muslim, do you think these are critical?
I think it's very important, especially in today's day and age, and especially as Pakistani Muslims, because I'm unfortunately, because of our colonial mindset and colonial background, we have this sense of insecurity, of not being good enough, of not being worthy of being leaders of the world, and that comes from our colonial history. It comes from also the fact that unfortunately the Muslim Ummah is not in a great place today in terms of its status in society. So to counteract that, you have to inculcate those values and experiences in the younger generations so that when they go to these positions, they don't feel insecure. They feel like they belong on the table. They feel like they belong on that platform, and that they can make that change that is true to their values, and that they can stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone else. And I think that is necessary not just for us as Muslims, also for us as Pakistanis, because one of the biggest challenges we face as a country is we're plagued with this mindset of being second fiddle, being not good enough, unfortunately being, भिखारी हैं हम गुलाम हैं. वो जो concept है वो तभी जाएगा when we're in these institutions where not arrogance, but we should be prideful. We should be prideful of our heritage. We should be prideful of the fact that we're Muslims, that we're Pakistanis. So वो एक proudness तो होनी चाहिए ना. And that proudness should not go into arrogance again, because we probably haven't done anything to deserve those statuses. But unless we're proud of our background, we're never going to feel secure when we're standing in front of someone who ain't proud of their background. So I think it's absolutely essential, and I see this in my life. I think Alhamdulillah, because of the education that I've experienced, I don't feel second fiddle to anyone when I'm in a room with people from Harvard, people who've lived in the US their entire lives. और वो इसीलिए है क्योंकि अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह उन institutions ने मुझे वो values दिए कि what they can do you can do as well.
No doubt, and again, kudos to our Sheikh. I can see it in my own life. My parents get a bit worried sometimes, but I feel hyper proud of Pakistan, and our Sheikh has really, really striven to inculcate that in us, this strong pride in our country. This is what we have. This is what Allah has given us. This is a country that Allah has created, right? Is unfortunately still a lot of negativity. Of course, not to hide away the issues, but every country has issues, and I think we should definitely look at the positives and this turbocharged positivity. I had tears in my eyes when I landed just 3-4 days ago. The whole time I was just thinking, my Shaykh has transformed me so much as a person, where I was just ecstatic coming back to my homeland. In fact, inshallah, stay tuned for a session, a bayan on
marketing
back to my beloved homeland. Literally on that flight, I was like, I'm back to my beloved homeland. Yes, we have issues, yes, we have problems, but Alhamdulillah, this is what we have.
I want to add to that. I had a similar feeling. Abu, recently, I mean, as everyone knows, this Iran war is going on, and the problem isn't solved yet. But I think there was a major source of pride for me when Pakistan hosted the talks, and मैंने उसको अपने status पे डाला था, and I even got the best of responses. Like people are like, यार ये क्या तुम इस पे क्यों खुश हो यार?
Why are you happy on this?
Are you proud of this? Why not? Why shouldn't you be proud of your country having an achievement that no one else had?
I think what they're trying to say is, and I think this is also a bit sad, that our love for our country is predicated on the country giving us something.
Yeah.
Even though it has given us so much, but we want more and more. Until the time it isn't this worldly superpower,
Yeah.
we will not be proud. So it's a very transactional sort of relationship, right? If it's a transaction relationship, then you are probably getting what you are getting, right? So again, I'm not saying that we should paper over the issues of our country, but instead of criticizing, being positive about it will probably have a far more impactful reaction. And just one, there is a saying also,
ask not what your country can do for you, but
tamanna bhi chhod de. How does it go? It'll come back, I'm sure. We have a lot of poets in this audience over here. But again, not nationalist pride, but a homeland that Allah has gifted to us. I'm not joking. Today, in the Friday bayan, also one of our the muezzin was talking about this, that freedom, azadi, the freedom that we have is a gift from Allah to enable us to practice our Islam. Please. Can you translate that, please? So that
this is not a transaction.
This is not a transaction.
Ibadah of Allah.
This is ibadah of Allah.
And ignorant, forget it about
reward.
Wish of a reward.
So don't look at John F. Kennedy, but look at Hazrat Allama Iqbal Rahmatullah Ta'ala alayhi. Okay, this rich tradition of Allah-derived pride and knowledge that is there for us, just so beautifully shared with us with Zishan Bhai, that look, do positive, but it should, please don't make it transactional, because you will get what you are putting into the ground.
And there's one more thing I would add is the way you see it is a lot of people say कि यार but इस मुल्क में इतने मसले हैं, there's corruption वगैरह वगैरह, but the way I look at it is people who we love, our loved ones, our families, they're not perfect. They have their flaws, but that doesn't mean we stop loving them, right? And that doesn't mean when they do something good, you don't feel proud or don't feel happy. And that should be the same approach you have to your country. It is not to say that there aren't flaws. Those flaws exist, but it's your country should still be treated as an entity that you really love, because it is you, it is your family, it is your origin. तो आप उससे मोहब्बत नहीं करेंगे तो आप किस चीज से मोहब्बत? Then you're not loyal to your own roots. If regardless of the faults you still don't love your country.
And just a slight thumb, every time you feel like blaming a politician, just look at your driving habits. I'm really serious. When I landed from the airport, that's when it started coming. I said, yes, back in Pakistan. We get serious over here. For every person who in 120 decibel blames a politician, is that same person who is going on the wrong side. I'm not even joking. I have people complaining in my apartment association about how bad our apartment association is. Let's say to me, the police got a challan. Thank you, police, traffic police, for just literally finding a small shortcut and going the wrong way. And he found no issue with that. So I'm being dead serious over here. I'm very serious. Very often we tend to outsource our frustration and not look at our own contributions to the problem. And our Sheikh is militantly insistent upon this, that forget about someone else, take a look at yourself.
Exactly.
Don't look for relatives. So you gave the example of relatives.
Yeah.
Take a look at how you're contributing towards situation. I suspect if you do that, 90% of it melts away because you're just focusing on yourself, and the frustration, I think goes away. Well, thank you so much for that beautiful sharing that beautiful story about your grandfather taking you to the mosque, your KGS years, the importance of values, the importance of elite formation and elite thought, and ambition, and how we must expose our children to such places so that they be maybe the next generation of active Muslims, right? And the formative years are most critical. And then the love for our country, which I think we will keep touching upon during the course of this conversation. So now, Emily, we know about your youth, and now I'd really like to, before we move to your professional years, your meeting with Sheikh Saab. Do you remember the first meeting with Sheikh Saab?
I do really remember.
Everyone does. Every time the first meeting with Sheikh Saab.
The thing that it's funny because some of the things I remember are really funny. I remember that Sheikh Saab hosted me for a lunch the first time I met him. No, sorry. The second time I met him, he hosted me for a lunch. The first time I met him, I the first thing he asked is, "Are you a pure blood or a half blood?" That's a KGS joke, which is, did you start off from nursery or did you join?
And I think Sheikh Saab is probably the only one who started from nursery. Not pure blood.
Then he asked what house I'm in. But the first time I met him, honestly, I don't remember what I spoke to him about. I just remember that meeting, and I just remember leaving that meeting and wondering why I enjoyed it, because it wasn't relevant to anything that I was interested in at the time.
Yes, how you were introduced?
So my mom asked. I was going through some things in life, and then my mom said, "Hey, why don't you go meet Sheikh Saab?" And credit goes to my mom because she deserves credit for me going to Sheikh Saab for the first time. But again, सबसे पहली बात तो I still don't know to whom I agreed, because I was such a rebellious kid. I had obviously before I knew Sheikh Saab, मैंने कहा यार ये मैं क्यों जाऊँ किसी religious बंदे के पास life problems के लिए. And I to date, I don't know why I went to Sheikh Saab for the first time. I don't know why I went to Sheikh Saab for the second time. I don't know why I went to Bayans. I was wondering why I'm going. I would have no clue why I'm going, because I wasn't even remotely interested in the things that he would speak about, but it was just his aura. It was just the fact that you felt so comforted in his presence that you would just want to go regardless. So the first time I met, my mom asked me to go to him, and I discussed जो मैंने issues discussed किए थे उनसे, the problems I discussed with him. I don't know if I got a solution out of the first meeting, but I knew for a fact that I want to discuss this with him more. And then the second time he hosted me for a lunch at his house, where a Bibi Jan, who's Sheikh Saab's wife, personally cooked food for me, and I still remember that like it was yesterday, because he told me that ये Bibi Jan ने आपके लिए बनाया है, और मतलब वो, and I was like, यार, why? Why is he spending so much time dealing with this rebellious kid जिसके कान में एक स्टड लगा हुआ है और उसने चेन पहनी हुई है, and a lot more things, but I have no idea why, but he just kept approaching me.
There was no judgment, huh? These guys come with us stuff.
So remember, and I don't know if this is the right word. I remember um, the first. I remember when I fell in love with him because I went to I would go to these halkas, and he would after the halkas we would have this conversation. So when the lecture started, it used to be in his garden, and there would only be a few people, and he would just sit before the session, just introduce everyone, just ask about the what's going on, and then we would do the session. After the session, we would also sit and talk for a few minutes. Sometimes it went much longer, and I remember once I went और क्योंकि मैं उल्टे काम कर रहा था तो उसकी वजह से मैं बहुत परेशान था. I wasn't happy. I was really frustrated that day. And he came to me afterwards and it was showing on my body language, on my face, how frustrated I was. And he was like, what's going on? I was like, nothing. He's like, I'm not getting good vibe from you today. And I was like, nothing's going on. And then was just like he put his hand on my face और उन्होंने मुझे यूं प्यार किया और where like I just completely fell in love with him because that at that moment in my life where I felt as if no one's understanding me, where no one is feeling the frustrations that I'm going through, no one is feeling my emotions. There was this one person who related to my emotions. And that's why the connection started building with me and Hazrat is अब मुझे लगा कि यार, okay, there's one person in this world who understands what I'm going through, who doesn't judge no matter what I tell him, right? And who really worries for me. So I think that was the start of the journey. And then, like I said, then I kept going to the halkas, even though I had no interest um, in religious talk. But uske baad se it was just
You had no interest in religious talk.
I didn't for the longest time. But I would just enjoy his company, and that's why I would go.
Right. So you are not a prototypical religious background. You were definitely religious,
Yeah.
but for lack of finding a better word, more worldly, right? But still, this association, maybe the right word, maybe is this peacefulness also you feel when you.
And then I just want to add one thing, which is and the reason I wasn't religious is because the religion I was exposed to was कि यार नमाज पढ़ो नमाज नहीं पढ़े तो तुम काफिर हो और ये and वो and that's why I never felt affinity because yeah I had at different points in my life religion was forced upon me and that's why I felt very negatively about it especially in my rebellious phase I would I didn't want to force pray फिर मैं जबरदस्ती नमाज पढ़ने के लिए I would act as if I'm praying but I wouldn't actually want to pray and that was और फिर जब मैं when I spent time with Sheikh Saab, I remember it was my O level exams. And for some reason or whatsoever, for my O level exams, the night before the exam, I wouldn't pray Isha, but I would pray two Nafil for my exam. Um, and then once I went to Sheikh Saab and I said, Sheikh Saab, I'm praying two Nafil, but I'm not praying Isha. तो ये तो गलत नहीं है कि यार मैं जो है वो I'm not doing first but I'm praying two nafil and the only reason I'm praying two nafil is because I want my exam to go well and I thought he would say कि यार ये तो बिल्कुल तुम काफिर वाली चीज कर रहे हो and you're not doing the right thing and this is not you have no respect for religion and instead of saying that he's like that's great and I'm like what do you mean that's great he's like so the exam is in the theory, but you know that Allah will help you succeed in that exam. This is very important. So like he can help him. I was expecting him to say, आपने तो सही नहीं किया, and this is no respect for religion. It's the opposite. Where even that version act, he extracted the positivity out of that act and made me feel as if that minute connection that was having to religion, like he endorsed it. That's how I slowly started feeling positive about.
No, absolutely never lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us more than 70 mothers. It's a mafhum of a hadith. In fact, I remember Sheikh Saad often, recall him talking about how a person came to Hazrat Ashali Thanvi Rahmatullah Ta'ala, I think that, that Hazrat, I feel like my sajdas, they're not worthy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Please correct me if there's some this thing in this, but so Hazrat was like, Dr. Abdul Hai Rahmatullah, my apologies. Thank you for that correction. So he's like, okay, fine. So I'll do this, that I'll give you 1,000 rupees and you do such in front of me that, he's like, no, I'm not going to, what do you mean? This was a while ago, right? In the 40s, 50s, right? So 1,000 rupee had some value. So he's like, okay, 10,000. No, Hazrat, I'm not going to. What you asking me to do, right? So karte lakhs, crores, whatever. And he's like, look, this is the value of your sajda. Of course, it's the value is limitless, but just trying to drive home the fact that you turning towards Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, acknowledging that is Allah and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala only to who I reach out to in my times of need, in my times where I'm tested. Never ever devalue that act, however minute or insignificant it may seem to you, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again loves us more than 70 mothers. And I think that is something that our mashayikh really bring out. That's right. There's a fatwa and then there's a taqwa, right? And because of their focus on both, right, they bring out the best in what again seems to us the most minutest act. And I think that really motivates us to keep going even in the darkest of times, right? So you were in the pits, you were saying, and mashallah, you still continued. This mud blood pure blood thing though is a recurring feature for most of what Sheikh said. First question, mud blood, pure blood. And I was like a super mud blood, class 9 entry into Karachi Grammar School. But again, this thing, I don't remember what you said, what the conversation was, but I do remember on the way back home, so I have Tourette's syndrome, or you can't see it now, but like when I'm very stressed, like I'll do like this, like vocal tics or physical tics when I'm stressed, right? And I had it really bad at that time. This is when I come back from the Netherlands. I was really in a dark place. And I used to smoke a lot of cigarettes, like just crazy amounts. Um, the harder, the better, basically, cigarettes, right? But I remember on that whole journey back, I was literally cruising in my car. I didn't smoke any cigarette. I just felt pure sukoon. So this is aura that you're talking about, these vibes that you're talking about, these Allah Allahs, we don't even realize, but they're radiating that, right? That even in your worst, darkest pits of situations, it's so, it's that because they're radiating it so strongly that it can even lift you out from these pits, right? So
I know you want to move to the professional years, but I'm just going to give you one more anecdote.
I don't think it's the audience, I don't think they minded, but please.
The example that you said, there's a friend of mine who the first like he used to smoke and the first time he went to Sheikh Saab, I took him to meet Sheikh Saab, and after we were done with speaking to Sheikh Saab, we went out and we were in my car. And he said, "Can you stop at that cabin? I want to buy a smoke." And I was like, "Sure." And then we stopped at that cabin, and then he was just sitting in the car, not getting out. I'm like, "Dude, chalo." He's like, "Yeah, Delhi nahi ho raha."
Mm.
Was out of my. I couldn't understand. I'm like, he spent half an hour, and this guy is a proper chain smoker. It's not like this guy is someone who lights a cigarette once in a while. He's like, I'm not feeling it. Let's just go home. And this is like you said, that's the aura that these
And I don't
people
recall
have.
Sheikh Saab ever tell me to quit cigarettes. He never told me to grow a beard. He never told me to start wearing shalwar kameez, right? So I think this thing that beating religion through a stick into someone versus the opposite motivation that comes in from these Allah Wallahs.
No, I haven't seen a single example where that works. It's just really unfortunate that people not through the wrong intentions. I think their intentions are always right in terms of what they want is their children or their loved ones to go toward Islam. But I think it always works against their favor when you try to beat it into them.
I feel this is it. This is the thing about these Allah Wallahs, these mashayikh. They say you be the change.
Yeah.
And through that, everyone will change around you. Don't worry, but you be the change. And I often feel that we're trying to, outsource our frustration and even lack of happiness onto others and try to change them, right? So no, thank you for sharing all of that. I know that our experiences with our Sheikh is a vast ocean, which we can go on and on and on. I would love to also, and we'll come to this also because there's a few more things I want to definitely extract about the Allah Wallahs and Mashayikh representing our Shaykh. Just so okay, So now again, we've covered your the background you came from, your youthful years, your high school. Then you joined another high school, I believe, and then you went to LUMS. Please check out that episode. It's the first episode of the Friends of Allah series, in which I think Ahmed Bhai really gave us a gold line of information and inspiration that I think we can definitely follow in our lives. I did get a feedback from this gentleman who's gone to University of Chicago, right? That I would definitely love to, like, he's very inspired by many of the things that you shared. And I think this thing about the best of your abilities that Allah gave to you, unlocked through these Allah Wallahs, through our Shaykh, Shaykh Humayun Damakat that enabled you to succeed so much in your university years, right? So again, we're going through a formative period. You came across Sheikh Saab, and pretty much everything became set then, huh?
Yeah.
Your LUMS year went really well, graduated, mashallah, 3.9 GPA, fantastic. So, and we touched already about the professional years over there also, right? Towards the tail end of that episode, you joined a consultancy firm, you did an internship first.
Yeah.
They liked you a lot, even though that was incredible.
I want to talk about. I think that again, like everything in my life, the credit goes to Sheikh Saab. But so I joined this consulting company. And we've talked about how I got the internship in the last session. But I want to talk about the internship itself, which is that so this company had never ever in their history hired someone who came in as an intern. And if people have some sense of how consulting jobs work, and I think you've been through this, is that they have at least 4 or 5 interviews that you have to clear to be able to
studies and
personality test, case study 1, case study 2, case study 3, then the final interview with the CEO, and then you get the job. And I had never done case studies in my life. I still today have never done a single case study properly in my life. And when I joined this consulting company for the internship, the only thing in my head and the only thing Sheikh Saab had told me, probably not directly, but through the learnings that I had from him, it was that you should try your best and you should go above the call of duty. I think one thing that he said is if the start time of your internship is at 9, then you should be there before 9 every day. And that is one thing that I started with, that I would be at the office at 8:50 every day. And my boss would notice. She would notice that, this is one guy who's never late, no matter what happens. 8:50 is in the office.
This is a culture in our offices, unfortunately, in Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
Even in Engro, our day will start at like 10 o'clock.
Yeah. I mean,
Sheikh Saab would be like, no, you be there on the dot, and leave on the dot also.
Yeah.
So this was something that you already practically started.
Beyond that, so that was one thing.
It was Muslim, right? So I was a Muslim, the Sunnah and everything. That was one seemingly minor but profound.
But I saw the impact of it. And look, the impact of these things doesn't come in a day. Because if you do it for a day or a week, then people don't notice. But what I think my boss noticed is that for 2 months straight, every day, without fail, I was there on time. And it wasn't easy, right? It's not easy to be on time every day. Sometimes you're not feeling well. Sometimes you miss an alarm. Sometimes your car breaks down. But just the fact that I was there proactively on time showed her that, I was someone who was really dedicated. And then during my internship, I remember very clearly, I think this is something that as individuals, especially as young professionals, not to brag, but it's just something that I experienced that turned out positive, is we're happy with doing the bare minimum. We're happy with just being comfortable. And I would annoy the hell out of my boss if I didn't have anything to do. She would get annoyed because I would just keep chasing her and telling her I'm free. And she would be like,
in a consulting environment, to do that is very tough, right? Because you're inundated with work.
And then she would be like, dude, if you're free, just go have coffee. Like, why are you after me? And I'd be like, I'm only here for 2 months. I want to absorb as much as I can. If there's anything that I can do, even if it's a low priority thing, let me know and I can do it. I'm going to do it. And I would take a lot of initiative, even in the tasks that I was in, to go beyond whatever I was asked to do. And I think that was the core for why they really enjoyed my time with them, because they would always feel like I was the one who was ready to take on a task. I was the one who was ready to stay late at the office to do something that no one else wanted to do. And I was the one who was ready for the grit work. I remember because the consulting company was a health consulting company, we'd work with the Gates Foundation. A lot of our work was in slums in Karachi to figure out how many people have been vaccinated. And I would be more than willing to go to these slums. उधर गर्मी भी होती थी, उधर कचरा भी पड़ा होता था. Um, and it would be bad condition. It's worse than you can imagine. These places in that exist in Karachi even today. And I think my seniors really appreciated the fact that ये लम्स का बर्गर बच्चा बावजूद इसके they know that it wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. I would still go. And I think those are some of the things that they really felt um, positively about. And that's when after I left, after I was done my internship, and it was a funny story. So between my internship and the LUMS semester starting was like 15-day break. And because those were the only 15 days I had of a holiday, I would just sleep in till 2, 3 every day. And one day I woke up and I had like 5 missed calls from my boss. And I freaked out. I was like, "Oh, क्या हो गया?" मैंने कुछ, मतलब I was there 2 months after, like 10 days after my internship, that I had 5 missed calls. And her then there a text with that check your email. And when I checked my email, I had an offer for the company from the CEO to join full time after I was.
So I just want to touch 2 points because I don't know if those people realized it, but um, this was 2 or 3 examples of you following the Sunnah, right? And I was Shaykh, militantly, constantly, he's just constantly striving to tell us, to push us, to instruct us that inculcate the Sunnah in your life, right? So I can already see the Sunnahs, of the favorite things of Allah, some of whom that consistency, right? It's one of the beloved acts that Allah loves a lot.
Yeah.
Right? This idea of al-itqan, striving towards perfection, trying to whatever you deliver is of the highest quality possible, right? In fact, even for this session, even Ahmed Bhai and I know that how many back and forths we had to do for constructing this poster.
Yeah.
Right? This photo, I'm still not happy with, but Sheikh Saab was really not happy with our previous photos.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really good photos, but they were not.
But I'll tell you one thing. It seems, even to me initially, when Sheikh Saab would look at these minute things, I would think about why, and I'd be like, yeah, ये इतना relevant तो नहीं है. Yeah, this isn't that important, but that constant strive for perfection inculcates a much more important value in you, which is that you replicate that across your life. And I think I've seen a lot of benefit from that across my life. Is that if you keep striving for perfection, if you keep working hard, the end of the day, and this is something that I am a firm believer in. I feel as if every action that you do, no matter what the apparent consequences, अगर आपने उस चीज में मेहनत की तो आपको उसका सिला मिलेगा. You'll get a reward for it, no matter whether we see it immediately or not. So when you are striving hard for something, intentions, then you will get a reward for it.
Just about this intention, because we had this debate also, discussion last time also, right? Where you spoke about effort.
Yeah.
And Sheikh Saab really emphasizes on effort.
Yeah.
Right? And the niyat is to follow the sunnat of the Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So that niyat, with that niyat, pressing forth in the world, right? But just with that niyat, right? So that's in your heart. Now, whatever you do, it's in the light of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his acts, right? So striving is definitely there. But I'm just trying to say that maybe a person who's feeling frustrated, and I'm sure in our workforce we feel that a lot, right? The traffic and the electricity situation, and I'm trying so hard and I'm not getting anywhere, right? But what I've seen in my life also is this idea that Allah can do anything, and I don't know if it's an active thought process, if it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in our last discussion, that is one element where I feel that perhaps we don't focus enough on. I don't know where it's going to come from, but Allah is going to somehow open His treasures where I've experienced it multiple times in my life. Okay, and I had no active effort on my part, but maybe sometimes because of Sheikh Saab's training, that ya Allah kar lega yaar kuch yaar. And theek hai, Allah, Sheikh Saab told me that ask Allah to give me according to your shan, according to your magnificence, not my puny chokidari soch, right? Like Sheikh Saab says, right, ke, Allah wants you to ask according to His magnificence, and often we sell ourselves short by asking something which, as an analogy, कि या अल्लाह मुझे यहाँ पे make me a चौकीदार over here, you know. But Allah is saying, ask for the villa, ask for the mansion, ask for everything, you know, and ask according to Allah, and ask it because Allah Subhanahu wa Taala loves it that this person has come to me
to ask.
my slave has come to me to ask of me, and he has asked according to my shan. You know what? I'm going to give it to this guy according to his shan. And I've seen that in my life, and you've seen that in your life, where you were not expecting it. So you were including the Sunnah, and also so I go Sunnah and Allah Subhanahu wa Taala with their powers combined.
It's not everyone. If you look at your lives, you will see it in your lives because it is not a unique experience to you and me. It is a reality.
So what we teach an average Pakistani person who's working in a professional environment and is facing those genuine frustrations, and he's not seeing the fruits of it, right? Because you have inflation, you have problems. What would you tell that person? How would you motivate that person to feel that in their frustrated professional lives?
There's two things. There's one example I have in mind, which is something that I think about often. And that example is of these daily wage laborers. And one thing that I see is जो daily wage laborers, I mean, people who work for a daily wage, generally their income is very minimal, right? Minimum wage kamate hain. And if I think of it, I think about how this person makes ends meet. It is not possible for at least from how I think about it. It doesn't seem possible that someone who earns 35, 40, 45,000 makes ends meet, but they do. And the reason they do is because we have conflated money and risk together. We don't see it as separate entities. Money and risk are not the same entity. Risk is promised from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And risk is there can be barakat in your money, which fulfills your needs without you actually having that objective figure of, like, you and I discussed ₹1 billion. अगर वो objective figure नहीं भी exist करता, if you work hard, and this is what I believe, if you work hard, if you are honest and you make the right efforts, आपके risk में बरकत हो जाएगी. Regardless of whether or not you're earning that target amount of, let's keep it ₹1 billion, whether or not you're earning ₹1 billion, regardless of whether you have that target amount, if you're working hard, if you're honest, and if you're committed, then Allah Pak will create from that whatever objective figure that you make, ensure that your needs are fulfilled because He's promised it in the Quran. Quran में लिखा हुआ है ना कि रिस्क तो अल्लाह की तरफ से, so there's no debate about it, there's no proof about it. It hasn't said that you achieving a certain X amount of salary, वो कुरान में नहीं लिखा कि ये salary जो है वो defined है, but risk is 100% Allah's decision. Not to say that anything else is not in Allah's control. Allah Pak has written in the Quran that everything is in His dominion, right? That's how the Quran starts. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. But especially in this situation, He has said that risk is in His hands. So, and the way I see it is that, and if you see your lives, and if I see my life, any consequence, any event, any situation that I'm experiencing has a very small link with the actions I'm committing. Because a lot of the times what you do and the result, it doesn't make sense how action X leads to result Y. And the reason it doesn't make sense sometimes is because the result, the transition from action X to Y is in Allah's hands, right? So what that means is your action is. I hope this doesn't get too complicated.
No, so let me just. I want to put an example in this. Okay, so I got a sales job at Engro. Okay, and my background was sustainability and corporate social responsibility. Very easy sort of work. Doing good. And then I was given a chance to join a sales job, right? And this was when Pakistan was going through a crisis, right? If you remember the exchange crisis in 2022,
Yeah.
23, right? And Pakistan was supposed to collapse in the next 5 days, etc. And can you imagine? I'm going from like a 20 raftar wali gadi, like a 20 kilometers per hour car, and all of a sudden a super turbocharged Ferrari. Customers are calling you, where's our order? We had plant problems, etc. And someone advised me that, Sadat bhai, aap sab batao kya masla hai? You know what the problem with you is? Aap jhoot nahi bolte. Like you don't lie. Okay. And I must say, if I didn't have my sheikh with me, right, I would probably have succumbed to the temptation to lie. Now, I'm not going to say that I did myself proud in every situation. There were times where I was in a very gray area, talking to your customers. They have paid you the money. You have to give them something. You have to balance different customers based on their profile. So you have to figure out how, if not to tell the truth, but definitely not lie. And it became a finer art. And there were times where I felt like I was drowning. I called my Shia, I'm like, Shisa, I feel like I'm drowning. Like, why do I come into this thing? Sheikh Saab, he really pushes you, go ahead, strive ahead. Saad, you got to go in a more commercial function, you have to push yourself forward. Lekin Saad bhai, aap jhoot nahi bolte. You don't lie, right? I couldn't convince him. And ultimately, alhamdulillah, I think my customer was very satisfied with me. In fact, I think what happened then was they were like, yeah, this guy, he doesn't bullshit us. He might not be telling the truth, but
Yeah.
he's not lying to me. And sometimes I would tell them also, yeah, I can't give it to you because I have to give it to a different customer. This is just the reality of it. I just tell the truth even sometimes.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm not a typical salesperson, the typical sales profile that you have, the stereotypical fast talking, you don't know if he's saying the truth or not saying truth. I definitely don't have that profile. Yeah, because I'm a good person, but my personality is not like that, right? Still, I like to think when we got the NPS scores, we got the highest in the region. Okay. So what would you tell that person? I was able to convince him.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you tell that person? Ki Saad bhai, Ahmed bhai, if you want to succeed in this life,
Yeah.
you have to lie.
Difficult question, but I think the answer goes back to you have to look at times in your life because those are the only valid experiences that you will um accept. You have to look at times in your life where you worked hard and honestly for something, and eventually you will see that you got the result for it. And you will look at times in your life where you worked dishonestly, where you didn't work hard, where you were lazy, and you will see the negative consequences of it. Because it is a reality that exists. This is not a unique experience to people who are in the path of Sufism. It is a reality that exists. कि अगर आप कोई चीज मेहनत से if you work hard for something, if you're honest for something, you will get the reward for it because it's defined in the Quran. And if you're not honest, if you don't work hard, even if you see apparent success, it will be eventual failure. But just forget your Jannat, Jahannam. In this life, you will see eventual failure. You've seen billions of examples of this, right? People who created these sham institutions. I mean, there's this documentary series, everyone should really watch it. It's called Bad Boy Billionaires, which is a list of which is different episodes of people who created, pyramid schemes and these terrible ways to scam people. And there's always this arc where at one point they're at the top of the world, but then their downfall is terrible, and they're stuck for life with this embarrassment, with this label on their head that they're scammers. So बात ये है कि there's no way to promise that if you work hard and honest today, you will get the result tomorrow. There's no way to promise that. No one can promise it because no one can predict or promise the future. But what you can promise, if you believe in the Quran, is that eventually, you will get the reward for
This
it.
is a promise from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala.
It is, and then look, that reward doesn't have to be what you think the reward is. It's a reward that Allah Pak decides. It may be that you became a smarter person. It may be that you realize that he's not just working hard but working smart. Those rewards don't have to be exactly what you expect them to be. I'm a firm believer that if you look at your own lives, Don't look at anyone else's life. Don't look at any other experiences. Reflect on moments when you've had, reflect on those dichotomies where one time you're working hard and honestly and one time you're not. And you will see that when you're working hard and honestly, then आपको उसका result मिलता है. And the example is that daily wage laborer that earns 40,000, like, and he's still making his ends meet, even though logically to you and me it doesn't make sense.
You had a second example also, if I remember.
I don't remember.
Okay, sure. Fair. Okay, no, again, thank you. I'm sure in your own line of business, so Ahmed Bhai is a fast rising textile superstar.
Hope so.
Mashallah, inshallah. We're definitely rooting for you. But I'm sure in your own industry, you see that, right? I see, Alhamdulillah, I was blessed to live in a Memon neighborhood, so people were very active business people, right? And you really see, the crooks and the genuine, honest, right, persons, right? And in fact, there is this thing also in our, I feel in our society, कि यार वो बड़ा तेज है. He's really sharp, really cunning. And this guy is a Buddhu. But I've seen the Buddhus, the people who are playing the long game, mashallah, they establish their names in the market. And I'm sure you've seen that in your industry, right? All the leading players, because of, I'm sure the honesty was one of the element that conspired to inform their success.
I think it plays a very essential role, and not in the ways that you would think. I think beyond, I think what people feel, especially in Pakistan, especially in manufacturing sector, and especially in textiles, is the way the top of the trade is कि आपको झूठ बोलना पड़ता है, जैसे आपने बोला, या आपको लोगों को it's definitely there, and या आपको लोगों को it's important for you to deceive people, and without that you can't succeed. And like you said, like I've experienced the same thing, where people believe that without doing these certain actions you cannot achieve success. But on the flip side, you will see that people who've been consistently honest and who've consistently been transparent and not deceived, their status in society, in the industry, their reputation is unparalleled from everyone else. And eventually people find out. I mean, if you're a crook, if you're scamming people, if you're deceiving people, eventually, it might go on for a bit, it might go on for a few years, but people will differentiate. And you will always see that person who's honest, that person who's true to their word, that person who tries their best to meet a commitment, they will get more value and more precedence over others.
And you were saying from a business person perspective, you also work as an employee, and I'm sure a lot of people joining over here work for a salary, they work in employee status. That's what I work for. Would you encourage them also, like in a similar way, that you will see success, reward, honesty is key?
I mean, yeah, I think again, I would go back to the same point. Is I would say try it, and you will do it for 3 months. Give yourself a test that for 2 months. Don't even do it for 2 months. If you are doing something that is not honest, or you're deceiving someone, you're not being honest to your work, find one instance where it is easier for you to be less dishonest than you were the last time, or be more positive, or be more transparent than you were the last time, and just take that leap of faith, and you will see the difference in impact. You will see the difference in outcome, just because you were smart in that one situation, just because you were honest in that one situation. And it doesn't have to do just with honesty. It has to do with, and honesty isn't just saying the truth. Honesty is being honest with your work, being dedicated to your work, not being lazy about it, not just doing the bare minimum. Try in that one instant to truly dedicated to what you're doing, and you will see that there is a massive difference. I've seen it in my life. I'm sure other people who've done this will say that there is a massive difference when you're really dedicated to something. You see the results.
And our small one example that has always stuck with me, and which is why I buy my own pen and book, no joke, is our Sheikh telling us that don't write your soda even, don't write your groceries even with the office pen. Okay, I don't think you use the word stealing, but
Yeah.
you're deceiving your work, right? And it seems so small, so so small, right? I just feel if all of us Pakistanis had that basic
Mindset. Yeah.
mindset, I think many of the issues that we face. I'm sorry I keep focusing on this point. I think every nation has one, because I've lived in the Netherlands, I'm now in Saudi Arabia, and I really see every nation has one negative aspect, right? And I don't focus on that because I think one negative aspect of Pakistanis, we criticize each other too much. We criticize ourselves too much. And I really see, especially living abroad now, how much in Pakistan, the love for the Sunnah. I really see in this region how much love we have for the Sunnah and how it gets us through so many troubles that we don't realize even. But just one thing I feel that really holds us back is this honesty factor. I worked in Anglo before this. I came across many captains of industry, and one factor of success I really felt in the successful businessman was this honesty factor, and we really sell ourselves short.
Yeah.
In
I think there's a reason for it too. I think there's the unfortunate reason, and my sad prediction is if we don't get out of um doom scrolling, it's gonna get worse. Is that we as individuals, because of how our brain is conditioned due to Instagram, Facebook, whatever, is we seek instant gratification, and oftentimes by oftentimes honest work does not have instant gratification.
honest work does not have instant
It
gratification.
doesn't, right? Because you look, the more effort and the more hard work you put in building the base for something, the stronger the institution will be eventually. And building the base for something in the right way, in the honest way. And again, I don't want to limit honesty to just saying the truth. It's beyond that. It's also being honest to your work, being honest to your intentions. जितना आप उस पर मेहनत करेंगे उस बेस को स्ट्रॉन्ग करने के लिए, उतना वो इंस्टीट्यूशन established, the end result will be powerful, right? So, and working on the base doesn't look like anything, right? If there's a construction site, if they're building the base for it, it doesn't look like anything. It doesn't show you results, and that's the same thing. Working hard for something, working hard for a big vision, for a big future, in the initial stages will not look like anything. And if you're trying to find the easy way out, if you want to find the hack, if you want to find the quick way to get rich, उसका institution basis strong नहीं रहेगी.
This reminds me, Sheikh Taqi Usmani Swad Barakatuh Ali. Like in 1989, I think they had an economic conference after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and
Yeah.
that's when he started, I believe, around that time
Yeah.
about developing a non-interest based
Yeah.
alternative banking sector, right? And lo and behold,
आज भी फैला है.
35, 40 years later, fastest growing sector. Forget even about the financials, though. I'm just saying what respect that man is. He's a mountain of this aura that we talk about.
There's so many other examples. I mean, look at this institution we're in. When did UG start? 2019, right? We're in 2026, and the past 2-3 years have been the boom of this organization. I mean, you could say in 2020 that yaar ye to ek saal ho gaya, ispe to kuch bhi positive nahi nazar aa raha. I've seen this in my business. It is still in a very nascent stage. And there are times where I feel as if, I can't see anything. Even though from the outside it looks great, but if from the inside you can see that you don't see an impact of it. I'm sure people at UX feel the same ways, that when they started off, and even now, they feel like they haven't got their effort has not yielded the same output. But that's what happens when you try to build something. Like you said with Mufti Taqi Usmani Sahab, he worked hard to build something without seeing the immediate results for very long. And now he's seeing the results for it.
So he had the niyat, he had the vision, he had faith in Allah, whether I succeed or not, this is the right thing to do. It wasn't easy. This world is not easy. Doing the right thing is not easy. But
it's easy way out. It's not the hack. Unfortunately, what about because we're stuck with this group of wanting to be instantly gratified or rewarded for whatever that I feel like a lot of us are mentally stuck in school where हम चाहते हैं कि हम अभी टेस्ट दें और 3 दिन बाद उस टेस्ट का रिजल्ट आए और हमें पता चल जाए कि A आया है, B आया है, C आया है. We have to get out of that mindset if we want to succeed in life. I've seen this. I've been stuck in this mindset for very long, and it has always impacted me negatively if I seek instant gratification, and if I accept that my hard work will take time to realize in an outcome, then A, I've been patient, which is important when you're building something.
Which is a virtue in itself also.
And then B, I've seen the impact of patiently chipping away and working hard to get an end result. And अगर आपको वो intended result नहीं भी मिल रहा, you're at least becoming a more disciplined, hardworking person, which is a result in itself, which is an achievement in itself.
So one virtue and one sunnah that our Shaykh really focuses on is time, respecting time, right? So I believe we started on the dot at 6. What time is it right now, Dishan?
7:10.
It's 7:10. So we're 10 minutes over time also. Now we have two options, okay? Because the idea was that at 7 o'clock we'll start question answer session, right? So we can do either of two things. Either we can continue for another 20 minutes. Actually, we have a lot more ground to cover, which I don't think we'll manage to, but we'll try. We can continue for the another 20 minutes, or, and here I will let the audience make the decision, or we can go right now to the question answer session. I understand you're very busy. It's the weekend. So I would prefer maybe the second one, but how many people would like to move to the question answer session right now? Just if you could raise your hands. And how many would like to continue for another 20 minutes maybe on the discussion? Looks pretty even out, I would say, right? So I think just to respect
veto power.
I
think he does get a veto power.
Deliberately asking the first question. No, but Disha, I would say just to respect timing, right? I would say let's move to the answer.
Yeah, but this having you guys here, such diversified experience and mashallah such accomplished careers, and I think I have questions that I would want to know that could benefit me in my professional life, maybe from your experience. So I think this is an opportunity that we probably won't get again.
I agree. Absolutely. And the focus is on being practical Muslims, right? So I completely agree. And again, respecting the time, please, as Pakistanis, as professionals, we must really, time, just one point to make, time is the only thing in this entire universe that has no qaza. Okay, that's the supreme quality of time. Everything is the qaza. Roza, namaz, hajj, but not time. So time is something that's sacrosanct. So I will what I'll do is whoever raises their hand first, I'll reach out to them first. I'll repeat your question for the benefit of the people joining us online, and Ahmed, I will try to answer that. Right. So the first question from the audience, if we can have, that's not a veto one, ideally. Please, please.
So,
your name, please, and then Usman. Okay.
I have two questions. Number one is, क्योंकि हमारी इस टाइम पे जनरेशन है काफी यंग है जो कि प्रोफेशन में ऑन बोर्ड हो रही है और जितनी भी जनरेशन है इस टाइम पे वो मोस्टली जो देखा जा रहा है वो देखा जा रहा है कि फोकस है ऑन मनी rather than knowledge, rather than कि कोई अच्छा नॉलेज और लर्निंग गेन करिए. तो इन दो को टीम को किसी जो यंग पीपल्स हैं इनको किस तरीके से मोटिवेट कर सकते हैं कि वो नॉलेज को ज्यादा प्रेफर करें rather than money. पहला.
So Usman bhai's first question is that how can we motivate this incoming generation to be motivated more through knowledge versus monetary reward?
Second, young generation है और इनमें aggressive बहुत ज़्यादा है, aggressive से सोना बहुत ज़्यादा है. तो as a queer जब ये काम कर रहे होते हैं तो something बहुत ज़्यादा उसमें disagreements होते हैं. उन disagreements को absorb करना और उसके ऊपर एक दूसरे की रिस्पेक्ट को मेंटेन रखना ये बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है जो कि अभी थोड़ी सी रिलैक्सनेस होती है जो कि प्रोफेशनलिज्म में मुझे थोड़ा सा जो नजर आ रहा है. तो इस चीज को किस तरीके से हम उनको मोटिवेट कर सकते हैं, उनको एडवाइस कर सकते हैं यहाँ पे कि जो आपके क्या कहते हैं प्रोफेशनलिज्म में उनकी अपनी रिस्पेक्ट है और सारी चीजें.
So Usman bhai's second question is that he is again seeing this newer generation, this tendency towards aggression versus solving issues by talking it out through a respectful and engaging manner, right? So how can we try to push back against that also? So Ahmed,
you want to answer the first one?
You're the man of the hour, so please.
Yeah, I think जो पहला question है, first of all, look, money is important. So, especially in today's life, you can't ignore the value of wanting to earn a good income. उसकी वैल्यू अगर आप इग्नोर करेंगे तो आप अपने आप को भी बेवकूफ बना रहे होंगे. एंड प्लस सम पीपल हैव फाइनेंशियल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज, उनकी जिम्मेदारियां मजबूरियां होती हैं जिसके लिए वो समटाइम्स दे कंपेल्ड टू सीक करियर्स और seek professions where they can immediately make a certain amount of income. So that is that is important, and you have to give it the value that it deserves. That desire, आप उसको बोलेंगे यार ये क्या है यार, you know, why are you running after money? If someone like me is saying it, it's because I'm saying it because I don't have to worry about it as much as the other person does. Um, but at the same time, what I would say is, oftentimes that pursuit of money in itself is counterproductive, because when you're pursuing just a certain income, you're not working on improving yourself to be able to be able to be able to grow as an individual, because आपका objective change हो गया, आपका the way of looking at it has changed, and the way of looking at it is I want to do something that brings me immediate income, और उससे फिर आप अपने ऊपर मेहनत करना बंद कर देते हैं. So I would not say that if you want to make money, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. उसमें कोई बुरी बात नहीं है. But उसके लिए essential है to earn knowledge. उसके लिए essential है to upskill. उसके लिए essential है for you to work hard and build yourself, your personality, your skills, your knowledge to a level where you can achieve that level of income. Right? So मैं ये नहीं कहूंगा कि अलग चीजें हैं या ये चॉइस है कि यार you either make money or you seek knowledge. I think both can go together. I think it's also okay, absolutely fine for you to want to earn money and be rich. हमने इस चीज को एक अछूत बना दिया है, हमने इस चीज को नेगेटिव बना दिया. You know, you're trying to make money, that's fine. You can wish to earn money for positive reasons, like helping other people, like helping your family, like having a good life for yourself. इसमें कोई गलत नहीं है, इसमें कोई गैर दीनी बात नहीं है. ये एक there is nothing un-Islamic about wanting to make money. There is what is un-Islamic is loving money. मनी से मोहब्बत, इनकम से मोहब्बत जो है ना, वो दीन के खिलाफ है. इनकम होना, वांटेड टू हैव गुड इनकम, देयर इज नथिंग रॉन्ग विद इट. एंड टू हैव दैट, you need to build yourself as an individual. You need to build your skills and your capacity and your mental capability to be able to be in that position where you can earn that level of income. So I think in jawab, I don't know if I answered it properly or not.
Just if I can build on it, look, in fact, I would be even more aggressive than ever. I think everyone should earn money. They should be supremely ambitious. They should want to earn a lot of money. I think we live in a day and age where just to protect one's deen, one needs money. Okay? So I think one should hyper aggressively, saying it, this thing, one should pursue money. But one should also ask themselves that do they want that money in a way where, because you know, after you get money, what do you want? You want respect. You know, so do you want that? I'm using a utilitarian argument. Everybody, mashallah, is using a deendar example, but I'm coming down to more to my level. Look, if you want, then after that transition, that wealth, you should have some respect also with it, which everyone craves. Then you have to ask yourself, what is the way that you get it? Will you get it through, you know, Instagram millionaire ways, Miami Vice methods, or do you want to do it in a way where you are a captain of industry? You are sought after for advice. You know, you are looked up to as a mentor. And the way around that is there's no way around that other than really inculcating yourself as a human being, you know, having not just expertise in your own area of industry, but in adjacent industries also, to develop yourself as a well-rounded person, you know, where, and if you really want like the mahfuz way, in a religious way, not overtly so. You don't want to grow a beard, fine. You don't want to grow a topi, fine. But you know, at least bring Allah into it also, right? Somehow, just small niyats. It's not small, it's profound. But so if you just mix these things, you need to earn money in this day and age. I really think there's no two ways about it. Okay? You can see inflation, you can see things happening around you. In fact, I think the Muslim needs to pursue money, right? They need to pursue money, because if you won't do that, you leave it to all the crooks that are out there.
But not love money.
But not love money. Right, that's where the deen element comes in. I think eventually, if you bring that niyat in, even if not overtly so, Allah makes it such, okay, things improve for you, right? So,
And then
just
to answer your second question, I agree that people have become more aggressive, and I've seen this in my experiences as well. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we make हम अपने दिमाग में उन प्रॉब्लम्स को बहुत ज्यादा कन्फ्लेट कर लेते हैं, हालांकि वो प्रॉब्लम्स इतने बड़े होते नहीं हैं, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दोस प्रॉब्लम्स और दोस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स बिकम इमोशनली चार्ज्ड बिकॉज दे फील बिगर देन यू, दे फील ऑल कंज्यूमिंग, एंड यू फील लाइक यू आर स्टक इनसाइड दैट प्रॉब्लम, यू कांट सी अ वे आउट, और उस वजह से अब आप उस प्रॉब्लम से या उस कॉन्फ्लिक्ट से निकलने के लिए यू आर डूइंग एवरीथिंग दैट यू कैन, एंड देन यू एंड अप बीइंग अग्रेसिव. सो वन थिंग दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट इज to contextualize whatever problem you're facing in the bigger picture. And when you contextualize whatever problem you're facing in the bigger picture, you realize that it's इतनी बड़ी मसला ही नहीं था जितना मैं सोच रहा था. उससे क्या होगा कि वो जो इमोशनल स्टिंग, इमोशनल अटैक है ना उसका, वो कम हो जाएगा. Once that becomes less, once that becomes less powerful, then automatically your aggression will go down. Core of it is to ensure to find a way, whatever that is, to take the emotion out of that conflict. Because अक्सर वो conflicts जो होती हैं वो बहुत simple, बहुत non complicated, बहुत non consequential होती हैं. But because हमने उसको उतना emotionally charged बना लिया तो उस वजह से हम उस पर बहुत ज्यादा aggressively we're reacting to it. So I think one thing is answer is to take the emotion out of it. You're dealing with your emotional reaction and someone else's emotional reaction. And then the second thing is the way to avoid that is to look at the problem in the big picture. And you realize in the big picture it's not too complicated, it's not too big of a deal.
look, Islam is the 5%. Our Shaykh Ahmed says namaz, roza, hajj, and 95% is akhlaq and adab, in fact, adab, which is increasingly being taken away from our societies, right? So I completely agree with everything you're saying for the person themselves, to take the emotion out of it, right? But just one thing I just want to add to that is that Usman bhai and whoever's over here, look, you can at least try to impact the environment for yourself. So you try to be that change that you want to see in the world. And secondly, please focus on your families and your children. Inculcate, spend time with your children, spend time with your families. We've spoken a lot about professional life, but inshallah, I hope next time we can speak about family life and balancing this thing. In fact, I would say in the hierarchy of importance, Deen is still all encompassing. Okay, so I don't separate that thing. But if there's something that comes out of the top, it's firstly your family, then it's your friends and your neighbors, then it's you yourself, giving time to yourself, exercising, physical, and then your professional career. And you make sure you do your professional career really well, right? But I think if we have this structure in our mind and really focus on our next generation, if this entire room is doing it with their family, mashallah, that's 30 families that are raising the next generation and themselves also, who are approaching things with with non-aggression, taking the emotion out of the fight, right? So try to influence your environment. Dunya, inshallah, will change. Don't worry.
So, because one of the other शुरू हो गई है, so if we have any other questions that we can take shortly, so I think more questions that we can get around to that would be better.
Perfect. Further questions? Nisham bhai.
I have a question. Is we get very confused. I get very confused with the context of the importance of Deen and the physical superficial element of it. Can you explain a little bit more elaborately, or what does Deen or being a Deendar means? Because I've built it up in my head that maybe being a Deendar means all these prerequisites that I have to do, and all the tick marks and that I have to do. And if I don't do that, then I am not a Deendar. And can you define that term, being religious, being a practicing Muslim, what it means? Do I have to do something superficial, something out of the box, something that I cannot do in my daily life? You get the question?
Yeah.
Simplify it. Can you simplify the concept for me, being a practicing Muslim?
Look, the reason I feel like the reason we don't understand what it means to be Deendar is because we haven't unfortunately spent time understanding the first example of Islam, which is the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. अगर हम उनके, if we understand his example, if we trace his life, that is Deen, and that's what the Quran says. इसके जो लोग ईमान रखते हैं, the people who believe, they should follow the example of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's Deen. सबसे पहली बात. And whatever the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has done, that is what it means to be Deendar. And then when you look at the life of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you will see that his that was spent on what you have, I think what I understand from you is superficial activities. They're not superficial activities like praying, dari rakhna, namaz padna, roza rakhna. Those things are important, but those things are a very limited part of his life. His entire life का बहुत small percentage थी जो कि actually spent हुई है in doing worship activities that we understand, activities of the masjid, praying, roza, hajj, zakat. बहुत limited time spent. But the majority of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time has been spent actively engaging in society. And Deen is understanding how he engaged in society and trying to follow it. So that's what Deen is. That's what being religious is. It has very limited to do with the fact that, again, not to say that praying, that you have to pray, you have to keep roza. आपको अपने worship, independent worship करना जरूरी है. But because the 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 entire epitome of Deen, the entire construction of Deen is the life of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that worship should only be given that importance जितनी आपसे सलाम ने दी, और वो बहुत important है, but that is a means to engaging in society the right way. That is a means to creating a connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, so that you can engage in society how Allah has instructed. And being Deendar is engaging in society in the way that the Holy Prophet engaged in society, and that is being honest, that is being truthful, that is being true to your word, that is being someone who makes the right commitment, that is a hard work. That is someone who works hard. That is someone who balances everything in life: their family, their religion, their societal responsibilities, their personal responsibilities. That's what being deendar is, and that is why, unfortunately, हम जब दीन पे आने की कोशिश करते हैं, अगर हम सही तरीके से नहीं आते, तो हमें उसका बेनिफिट महसूस नहीं होता, क्योंकि हम we're not doing it the way we're supposed to be doing, which is the life of the Holy Prophet. When we do it in the way that the Holy Prophet did it, when we try to follow his example, in its form and its essence, then you will see the results of what it means to be Deendar.
And if it gets too overwhelming, because obviously Nabi Karim Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in every facet of his life, and you need to start somewhere, right? So if it gets too overwhelming, I recommend focus on your family, because nobody like your wife and your children to tell you truly how you're performing Deendar wise. Okay,
Yeah.
we're very nice with our neighbors, very nice with our colleagues, very nice with our friends, but the true litmus test is at home. For me, because I have limited capacity, my test result is just my family. So again, I really, really think I would shakily emphasize this. The weekend is coming up. For those of you who are family members, focus on your family, focus on them, spend time with them. Please get off the barakat of the mobile phone, this fitna. I understand it's tough, but really focus on your children, focus on your family, and inshallah, I think much positive will come out from it. That's truly being a practical Muslim in this day and age. Any further questions? Please.
Yes.
Your name, please, sorry?
My name is Basir.
Abdul Basir.
I working in IT industry from last 8 years.
Masha.
मैं मालूम में visiting faculty भी रह चुका हूँ.
कितने faculty
Visiting
faculty. Masha.
मेरे भी यहाँ पे 2 क्वेश्चन है. फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन ये है कि पहले तो आप लोगों ने जो सेशन अरेंज किया बड़ा फ्रूटफुल था. इसमें बार बार आप जिक्र कर रहे थे, तो काइंडली आप हमें फर्स्ट तो ये बताएंगे कि शेख थोड़ी सी इंट्रोडक्शन हमें देंगे कि कौन है और किस तरह हम कांटेक्ट कर सकते हैं या कोई सेशन वगैरह भी. मेरा थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड भी है. मैं अनफुरहान के साथ अटैच रह चुका हूँ. 1 ईयर का मैंने कोर्स किया है. तो जब हम इसी तरह ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को टारगेट करते हैं जहाँ पे प्रोफेशनल लोग हैं और वो थोड़े से थीम से दूर होते हैं, तो अगर हम उनको इस तरह मोटिवेट करेंगे इस तरह स्टेशन पे, तो मैं अगर अपनी बात करूँ 1 साल वहाँ गुजारने के बाद अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह 5-6 साल हो गए, मेरा इतना पुख्ता यकीन हो गया कि मैं मतलब मुझे कोई भी बोले मेरे इसमें 100% श्योरिटी होती है कि अल्लाह के सिवा कोई रिस्क देने वाला नहीं है। और दूसरा ये कि अक्सर आपने एक पॉइंट बार बार रिपीट किया यहाँ पे कि दीन का लिमिटेड पार्ट जो है वो इबादत की तरफ है, और ज्यादातर जो है वो लोगों के साथ जो मामला होते हैं आपके डेली रूटीन्स पे, जिस तरह हम मुझे का फतवा हुज्जतुल बिदा देखे तो उसमें मोस्टली ह्यूमन राइट्स और उससे रिलेटेड पॉइंट्स लिखे। लेकिन मैं अक्सर देखता हूँ अपने रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशन में, ऑफिस में, स्कूल में, यूनिवर्सिटी में, अपने माशरे में, कि लोगों ने सिर्फ नमाज और इन इबादत को सिर्फ फोकस किया हुआ है। बाकी जो लोगों के मामलात है उन केसेस में वो बिल्कुल फोकस नहीं करते। वो यही सोच रहे होते कि हम ये इबादत करके जन्नत में आराम से चले जाएंगे, बाकी लोगों को वो हर तरह से नुकसान देने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो हम किस तरह अपनी सोसाइटी को बेहतर बना सकते हैं कि वो इबादत की के साथ साथ इन मामलात के।
All right. So there were two questions, right?
Yeah.
The first question was practically that if you could elaborate on our shaykh, which we touched on also, but to talk a bit more about our shaykh. आपने तब नहीं करेंगे because I think I had to talk a bit more about Shaykh Sahab. So that was Mr.
You wanna answer the first question?
You number one, and number two was that what we see is that um, that there's in society a lot more focus on the uh, the praying and the roza, the zakat, the hajj, but not enough about, or not at all about the dealings, day-to-day life dealings, right? So what is the reason for that, and what can we do to supplement that?
मैं आपको एक चीज बताऊं, मेरा ख्याल है आपके दोनों सवाल linked हैं. And I'll tell you how they're linked.
Both questions are linked.
I think both questions are linked, and I'll tell you how they're linked. The answer to your first question is our Sheikh is Hazrat Shaykh Humayun Hanif, Damtu Barkatu. He is उनको वो एक पिछले 35 से 40 साल से दीन के काम में है, जो कि उनको खिलाफत मिली है हज़रत शेख मौलाना शमसुल रहमान अल अब्बासी से.
Do you mind if he responds in English? Because okay, please.
Okay, sorry. So he's the Khalifa of Hazrat Sheikh Maulana Shamsul Rahman al-Abbasi Damtu Barakatuh, and he was granted ijaza by Hazrat Sheikh Maulana Shamsul Rahman in 1997. 1994. And since then he has been spreading the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala across the world, not just in Pakistan. उनका जो खानका है जहाँ उनके बयानात होते हैं वो डिफेंस के अंदर है, और उधर every Sunday around 4:30 there's a lecture that you can attend. It's open for everyone, and after the session I'll also give you the details. और हजरत जो है वो he is a Naqshbandi sheikh, as in जो Sufi orders होते हैं. He is a sheikh primarily of the Naqshbandi Sufi order, which he has learned from his sheikh, and then his sheikh has learned from his sheikh, and that is how the lineage works. And that is the way that he teaches zikr. But his learnings, his teachings are, like I said, like we discussed, primarily about how to deal with this world. Because these things, zikr, namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, these are things that we know about. But what is lacking, what is missing in society is how do you truly embody the sunnah of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? How do you use that to replicate and actually achieve true success? And he's identified that is the real reason that we as an ummah are not succeeding. The reason we're suffering is because we've left that true path. And like you said, we've limited ourselves to very worship. Again, I'm saying this again and again. This is not to discredit the value of worship. It is absolutely essential. वो फर्ज है, उनको ignore नहीं कर सकते. But there are other things that are also farz. Following the sunnah of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is also instructed in the Quran. And that is the answer to your second question. The reason that we lack this in society is because, like our Sheikh says, हम चलते बंदे की जिसकी पोस्टर रिक्शे के पीछे लगा होता है उसके पीछे चलना शुरू हो जाते हैं. We follow everyone that we see on YouTube as a religious leader, as someone who has authority on religion. And that is why we fail in understanding the true embodiment of religion. Because we're not truly assessing whether or not the person we're taking religion from has the true knowledge or the true stature to be able to teach religion. Uh, if we go to a doctor, हम पहले पूरी तहकीक करते हैं. We try to understand whether this person is trained, where they're qualified from, whether people have had good experiences with them, whether people have benefited from them. But for someone who we take religious knowledge from, which is not just important for our daily life, not just important for this life, but also the life hereafter, we don't really spend time assessing the credibility of that person. Like I told you, our Sheikh, Hazrat Shaykh Humayun Damatum Barakatum, has ijazat to teach the Sufi order from his Sheikh, which is Maulana Shamsul Rahman al Abbasi. He has the authority to teach the religious path from his Sheikh. And all of that goes up to the Holy Prophet. ﷺ. That is an authentic, verified chain of individuals, a person who has been validated from someone, who is then validating someone as able and capable of teaching religion. वो validation तभी होगी ना जब we see that this person truly embodies the essence of what Islam is. So problem is कि हम उस validation के बगैर किसी से जा रहे हैं. It is the same thing as us going to a doctor. Can you expect that that doctor will heal you? Can you expect that unfortunately, we discredit it. We have failed to clear that bar, the metric that we assess properly whether or not a person who is giving us such essential knowledge, not just for this life but the next life, whether or not they even qualified.